People think about capital as just money that's in the bank, but capital is more than just money. Like you have human capital, you have mental capital, like there's a lot of different components. And I recognized at a young age that the sharper I was with my mind, the sharper I was with my thoughts, that the more opportunity I could take advantage of in life, whether that's with my health, whether that's with my relationships, whether that's with business, it didn't matter.
It's the one.
I have a dream.
With great power comes great responsibility.
I could do this all day.
This is it. Don't get scared now.
They may take our lives, but they'll never take our freedom.
Cinderella story out of nowhere.
It's in the hole. That the only thing we have to fear is fear itself.
Capital hacking begins in 3, 2, 1.
Welcome back to Capital Hacking. Great to see you, John.
Amazing. It is so fun. What a great time.
So today's our episode with Matt King. So many of you out there in the world of podcasting have been waiting to meet Matt King. He's the new CEO of GoBundance. John, thanks for grabbing him on the show.
Yeah, Matt just dropped so many great nuggets along the way. You guys are going to love it. He talks about his upbringing, how he felt like he was different at a very young age and that there was something special about him. Even though he grew up in a very middle-class neighborhood, he was able to have a big vision when he was young.
Oh, vision. Vision is actually a key word. He's going to talk about vivid vision. He's going to talk about the work he's learned, the work he's done on himself. So there's a lot of that. We're going to walk away from here inspired to do a few of the techniques and methods, which of course are the classic GoBundance strategies of vision setting, goal setting, holding yourselves accountable, and having the belief that you can make the change in your life. But here's what really caught our attention. And I know it caught your attention because you and I both wrote it down in a big way. His upbringing, he said, taught him a principle called find the way or make the way, kind of a winner's attitude.
And on top of that, he also had a great articulation of the word mastermind, right? So that word gets used a lot, and a lot of people don't know exactly what it is. And Matt King articulates it perfectly.
You know what? That's good because everybody listening now, we all know we're listening to our favorite audio mastermind. Capital Hacking has always been, for thousands of us, our audio mastermind where we get to meet new people and have new ideas introduced to us in a casual, comfortable way. It will create a mastermind. So wait till you hear how he explains that. Ultimately, I love how he defines his vision for the growth and future of GoBundance, which many of you have heard on the show, many times on the show. We're so grateful for that community. So I think you're going to take away a lot, and you're going to know who's running the organization, and you're going to understand the great values that we're getting out of it. Oh, P.S. There's a killer Pat Hyben story in the middle here. If you love Pat Hyben, you're going to love this episode.
Buckle up, guys. Let's get it.
It is absolutely amazing to have you here, Matt King, the world famous Matt King.
Yeah, Matt. How are you?
I'm good, guys. I'm good. Thank you so much for having me on the show, man. I've listened to a couple episodes now and really excited about what y'all are doing and excited to be on.
Man, we are so excited to have you on, Matt. And I don't want to give away too much at the moment, but why don't you take us through a brief snapshot of your life, where you came from, where you are now, and spend a couple minutes just so our audience can learn something about you.
Yeah, man. I born and raised in a small town in Wisconsin, grew up sort of middle class, average, very competitive athlete growing up. Sports was very important in our family. Knew at a young age that I was just a little bit different. I always was sort of that like ADD, I want to do a million things kind of a person. And I always knew I wanted to own and operate a bunch of different businesses growing up. Of course, I had no framework or no understanding of what that looked like. But I learned at a very young age that, and my parents thankfully taught me this, that in life, you can either find the way or you can make the way. Those are your two choices. And so I've looked at every opportunity in my life to find a way or make a way. Hurdles, obstacles, doors, windows, doesn't matter. Find the way, make the way. Born and raised, like I said, in a small town. Grew up, college really wasn't for me. I was working in the shoe room at a country club here in Wisconsin and was going to school at the same time. School just kind of wasn't resonating for me, but I was sort of sucking it up and suffering through it. Started running a silk screening embroidery company for one of our members. Really learned a lot there, saw a lot of opportunity, decided to transition out, decided to start my own silk screening embroidery company. One day it came down to, do I write this paper that I'm paying $3,000 for? Or do I print these shirts for Aurora Healthcare that I'm making $3,000 for? And, for me, it was like, school, the hard knocks is the way I choose. I'm going to drop out of school and I'm just going to figure this out. So I dropped out of school, started my own business. At the time, started dating my girlfriend, who today is luckily my wife and the mother of our 2 beautiful children. And she was telling me she was going to go teach in inner city schools in DC. And I was like, great, I'll go with you. And her response was, I didn't think I invited you. I'm like, well, I don't think you have a choice. I'm coming with you. So I sold my company, packed up, drove across the country, spent the summer in Maryland. I was volunteering at a camp for children with incarcerated parents. I had like $20,000 in the bank. I thought I was like God's gift to the universe. I was 23 years old and like, life's amazing. Like what? I don't need anything. Like 20 grand. I'm never going to spend this much money. And so I'm like, I'm going to volunteer. I'm going to do some good for the world before we decided if we were going to be in DC or Maryland for her actual teaching program. So I volunteered at a camp for children with incarcerated parents, happened to meet this guy named Pat Hyben when we took the kids from inner city of Baltimore to the inner cities of DC one day, which is, they're very, very close geographically, but the people don't go to you don't travel. Like if you're from Baltimore, you do not leave the city. Like you're a Baltimore Cityan. And so we took these kids and Pat happened to be the additional chaperone on the drive that day. And so Pat, myself, and then these 4 children were in this group. I'm like, hey, what do you do? He's like, I'm retired. I'm like, oh, that's cool. What'd you do? Like, I'm a real estate investor. I'm like, man, my eyes started rolling in the back of my head. I'm like, here we go. One of these guys. He's like, oh, that's cool. Tell me about that. So he starts telling me about it. I'm like, okay, that's kind of interesting. I get it. Now, I'd never been exposed to investing or any of that stuff growing up. Like both my parents have great jobs and work their butts off and are hard workers and great citizens in the community. And that's just the way, right? So I was like, okay, that's the way. And then he's like, oh yeah, I'm a New York Times bestselling author. I'm like, here we go. But I've always been just super curious in my life, guys. I've always been just like, ask. And so I just kept asking questions and I actually grew to really like and enjoy this guy named Pat Hyben. We had a great day with the kids and got back on the bus. And I think I looked at like my iPhone 3 or whatever it was at the time and went on Amazon and ordered 6 Steps to 7 Figures. And I was like, I'm not a real estate guy, but I'm sure there's lessons I can extract from this book. I'll go read Pat's book. I read it in a day, sent him a message on Twitter and said, I read your book. What would it take to have coffee with you? Started to get to know Pat, started having conversations. One thing led to another. I went and worked for Pat. Then I got introduced to this thing called GoBundance, went and volunteered at their first ever mastermind in Orlando, Florida. That led to me volunteering at their mastermind in Tahoe. That led to me meeting this guy named David Osborne, who I was just like, sort of like internally resonated with. That led to me rewriting my 5-year vision, which led to David calling me out of the blue saying, hey, what would it take to get you to Austin? And now fast forward 8 years, I run David's family office and just stepped into a leadership role inside of GoBundance. 32 years old, been married for 5 years to my incredible wife, Melissa. We have a 3.5-year-old and an 18-month-old. And yeah, just going a million miles an hour and having fun and trying to be the best we can.
I'll tell you what, in a few moments, I really feel like we know you, brother. We know your kind of disciplined nature where you're like, hey, I'm a killer athlete. I'm an aggressive athlete. And here's how I live my life. I love my wife. I have great kids. And the Pat Hyben pivot was a little surprising to me. I did not know your story, buddy. That
Really?
dude, he shows up in the oddest spots. Like, remember when we were at a GoBundance event a couple years ago and he showed up on a rickshaw on Fox News or something crazy?
Dude, yeah, he was driving pedicabs in Carolina.
And then the news media just happened to jump on his rickshaw. I'm like, the dude just shows up. He's like in places doing things. Even the fact that the story has you and he as kindred spirits working at a camp for incarcerated children out of the blue. Like it doesn't seem like it fit your story up until then. And for him, we all know he cares about people deeply, but it doesn't really fit his story either. Like the two of you in that same spot and neither of you, it's not like your normal gig. I find that all great. That is such a great story, Matt. And I only knew you through working with you working with David Osborne. And when were you doing the volunteering for GoBundance? What year would that have been?
2013, I believe.
Oh, that's right at the beginning. Oh, so you
13 or
okay?
It might have been early 14, but it was right. Yeah, it was right there. I mean, we had, I think it was like 15 to 18 guys at a house in Orlando, Florida. Yeah. And Pat told me, he's like, you're going to go volunteer at this mastermind. And honestly, Josh, I didn't even know what a mastermind was. I had to Google mastermind.
Me too.
What the heck is this?
Me too. When I got invited to join GoBundance. So we should explain what that is when you get a second. You'll have to tell us what that means because not everybody listening knows.
I will.
Yeah, I had
he's
no
like,
idea.
You're going to go volunteer at this mastermind. So he said, you're going to go volunteer at this mastermind. And he said, you're going to work 18 hours a day. You're going to sleep on the couch, but I think you'll learn a lot. I was like, okay, cool. I'll do it. Whatever. So I go to Orlando and sure shit, I sleep on a couch. I learn a lot. And I meet David Osborne, I meet Rock Thomas, I meet Dan Grieve, I meet Ricky Williams, Adam Babineau, like met all these incredible humans. And I was just like, what did I do to be here? Like, I'm serving water and I'm serving coffee. I still remember this story. Like, and there's no way David remembers it, but David had these really nice bottles of wine. And so I was like pouring people wine, and then everybody was like ready for their second glass. And he was like, you do not pour the nice wine in the second glass. You go to the next bottle. It's like, oh, okay. Got it. I didn't know that. Like, I didn't know that was a thing. Like, sorry. And I remember one day they were going to go do the activity because adventure is a big component about GoBundance. And I said, okay, cool. Like, I'd love to golf. I'm a big golfer. And so Rock and David were like, okay, cool. Why don't you golf with us? I'm like, well, actually, I'd rather caddy. I used to caddy growing up, and I'd enjoy it more and let somebody else take my spot for golf, and I'll just caddy for you guys. So here I am, 23 years old, standing on the back of a golf cart, handing Rock Thomas and David Osborne 60-degree sand wedges so they can get out of a bunker. And I'm holding out of the back of this golf course, hearing these two hard-charging, goal-setting, driven entrepreneurs and men talk about business, talk about life, talk about goals, talk about vision. And like, I'm raking bunkers for them and grabbing the flag stick for them. But the whole time through osmosis, I was learning so much in that 4-hour round of golf that I was just like, I should be paying y'all to be carrying your bags. Like, I am learning so much here. And that was really when it all started for me, is recognizing the power of having a vision, setting goals, taking control of your life, and being sort of like a active participant in life rather than just a passive participant in life.
Amazing. And Matt, I mean, first of all, being a 23-year-old young man around men of that caliber and that experience is so powerful. And that's why I've been hitting you over the head to have my oldest Luke, who just turned 19 as part of Go Crew, march in Tahoe. Let's get him there. He's going to bust his ass just like you did and learn so much. And that kid is loaded with talent as well. But it brings me back to the quote that you started in the beginning of this podcast, that said, in life, you can either find the way or make the way. And explain a little bit more about that mindset. You're in college. You said your books and your class was $3,000, or you can make $3,000 doing silk screening. So talk about that mindset a little bit, and some of those adventures that you've had in just really stepping out and becoming who you are.
Yeah, well, I mean, I know that this show is mostly about mindset, right? People think about capital as just money that's in the bank, but capital is more than just money. Like, you have human capital, you have mental capital, like there's a lot of different components. And I recognized at a young age that the sharper I was with my mind, the sharper I was with my thoughts, that the more opportunity I could take advantage of in life, whether that's with my health, whether that's with my relationships, whether that's with business, it didn't matter. So I used to listen to Eric Thomas. Y'all know Eric Thomas, I'm sure.
Yeah, the hip hop preacher, right?
Yeah, one of the most famous like YouTube videos ever, like where he talks about like, so he held him down and he held him down and he held him down until he couldn't hold him anymore. Like, so I was listening to that all the time when I was growing up, just thinking about like putting myself in a state. And there's a quote from 50 Cent that said, like, sleep is for those people who are broke. I've got an opportunity to make a dream become a reality, right? Like, that's 50 Cent. Like, that's what Eric says 50 cents. And I was like, so I just like was constantly digesting this material. Other people were listening to country music, and I was listening to this like, random motivational speaker on YouTube over and over and over again. And I'll never forget. I mean, I think I was in 4th grade. I told my mom, I want Domino's for dinner. And I will never forget. She goes into underneath the cabinet, grabs the phone book, kind of drops it on the table and says, here you go, figure it out. I was like, oh, okay. So I called Domino's and I ordered the pizza and then paid. And then I recognized like the world is this amazing, incredible place where you can have whatever you choose and whatever you desire, as long as you're willing to put in the work. And as long as you're willing to put forth the effort. And when I was 18 years old, I wanted to buy a crotch rock, and my dad said, absolutely not. So I went to the bank, said, what does it take to get a loan? They said, well, you have to have credit. You don't have any credit. I'm like, okay, well, where could I get credit? She's like, well, I'd go over to Kohl's. That's across the street. They have credit cards. So I go to Kohl's. Well, they'll give anybody credit to buy socks and shirts, right? They gave me a $300 line of credit on my first credit card. And I just bought clothes, paid it off, bought clothes, paid it off, bought clothes, paid it off. 2 or 3 months later, I went to the bank. I'm like, hey, I've got credit now. What can I qualify for? She's like, well, you qualify for $7,000. I'm like, well, I can't get a new motorcycle for $7,000. So I went on eBay, bought a crotch rocket from Seattle, Washington, which hindsight was the stupidest decision for way many reasons than I can explain. Found a shipping company that put my motorcycle on a truck, drove it across the entire country for $500. Standing outside one day, my dad goes, what are you doing? I'm like, waiting for my motorcycle to get dropped off. He's like, yeah, whatever. Keeps cutting the grass. Giant semi pulls into our neighborhood, lowers this lime green custom painted crotch rocket off of it, puts it in the driveway and leaves. He comes back up in the front from cutting the backyard. He goes, you weren't kidding. I was like, no, I wasn't kidding. I wanted a motorcycle. So I just recognized like you can get whatever you want from life, man. And that like find the way or make the way was, I think, a famous quote that Eric Thomas said that just really has resonated with me my whole life, and is something I'm trying to instill in my children.
Yeah. Wow.
What?
Eric Thomas, and I'm going to paraphrase it, but I love it when he says, when you want success as badly as you want to breathe, you'll find it. Right. I
Yep.
mean, that's paraphrased, and he also is the no alarm clock necessary. I wake up because I'm motivated to wake up and embrace life. And that guy, he's so motivational. But getting back to the Pat Hyben part, which is hilarious. So I reached out to him the other day, Tuesday, and he just sends me a picture. I don't know where he is in the world. He's volunteering.
Jamaica. He's in Jamaica.
He's in Jamaica. I knew it was some other country. He just literally sends me a picture, doesn't even explain where he is, and says, "Hey, I'll catch up with you next week." And I was like, that's Pat, that's who he is. And I love that David Osborne saw so much talent in you. And he has a knack for seeing talent and placing him, a lot like Josh McAllen, actually. I told you that earlier. He's got a knack. By the way, I'm on this show because Josh heard me on another show, Action Academy with Brian Lubin, shout out, bro, and said, "Hey, dude, do you want to co-host because I love your energy?" I was not thinking about co-hosting a podcast, by the way.
Well, I was just
That's
gonna
the only
say,
reason I'm
clearly-
here.
I was just saying, clearly he's got a knack for talent. You're sitting next to him.
Oh, thanks, buddy.
I'll tell you what, Matt, I'm so grateful you just did that. You really allowed us, especially there's a lot of us listeners who are part of GoBundance, and then there's a ton of people that are trying to find out about what this world of GoBundance and masterminds are. And you really made your own story just so personal. Thanks for that. And by the way, you kept saying crotch rocket so many times. I haven't heard that expression in years. I love it. Like, we all need, it's the best. Do you still have that crotch rocket?
Heck no, man. I sold it when I was like 21 or 22. I was driving to work at this country club, and there was like, I lived in like very middle class, great neighborhood, great area. But the country club, of course, was in like the ritzy area, right? Like the very pretentious area. So I was driving to work. I think I was 20, 21. I was 20 because I wasn't drinking yet. And I was driving to work, and I pulled up to a stoplight, and there was this like, cute girl sitting next to me in a BMW in the passenger seat. And it must have been her boyfriend in the driver's seat. And he starts like revving his engine, like trying to show off. I'm like, dude, like, yeah, it's a cool BMW, but I'm sitting on like a 600cc motorcycle. Like, what are you doing? And I was like, all right, whatever. So I was like, I'm going to show off. So I like show off and do a wheelie and like think I'm like, again, this amazing, incredible human. Probably impressed the girl a little, but almost killed myself. And that day I was like, I'm going to sell this thing before I kill myself. And so I sold it a couple days later because
That was wise, man.
Whoa. I mean, you're going up in stature in my mind by the increment here. You could do that wait, how did you were you a motorcycle guy before you had a crotch rocket, or was that your first?
No, dude, that wheelie was 100% accidental. I did not want to do a wheelie. I just was like, I'm going to rev this thing as much as I can and take off. And front wheel came off the ground. I thought I was going to die. It was not on purpose. No, I'm not that legit. I had no idea how to do it. I mean, I could tell you how to do it now because I did it, but no.
Oh, I'm so glad you sold that, buddy. We'd be talking to some other different person today, I think.
Yeah.
So here we go, right? So in the beginning, you also, I jotted down here, you said you were different at a young age and you knew you were different. What gave you that feeling that, hey, I'm different, there's something about me? Did you feel like you had greatness? Because I always felt growing up there was something big in store for my life, regardless of all the crazy, stupid things that I did. I've just always had that in the back of my mind. Is that something you had? Like, how were you different feeling?
Yeah, I would say I felt similar. Like for some reason, I was always attracted to like the problem and coming up with a solution. And I was always attracted to like this big, complex process. Like I've always been attracted to like big, like you said, like a big life. And I've always been attracted to that. And I always like growing up, my parents used to have a condo on Jupiter Island, and we'd go down there and they had a boat on the Intercoastal, and we'd cruise up and down the island. And if you know Jupiter Island, like Tiger Woods has a house on the island, Ralph Lauren had a house on the island. Like, I mean, you're talking like mega wealth. And they lived in a beautiful, very, very modest condo and lived there since the 80s. But now that place has totally changed. But we would go up and down the island, and we see all these people's houses and all their yachts. And I was never envious or jealous or impressed. I was just always like, yeah, someday that'll be me. And like, for some reason, it was just in my head that like, that's the life for me. Like, I'm going to have whatever I want. And that looks cool. I'd love to have a house on the Intercoastal. So I would say that. And then I also knew at a young age that I was just different internally. Like my drive for success is just a little different. I remember in high school, we lost a soccer game and I was the goalie. And I was like 5'6", and so everybody was like, "Yo, you can't play goalie, you suck." Well, I started like 3.5 of the 4 years. Our team lost in the state finals my junior year and state semis my senior year. So we were legit. We were good. And I remember my junior year, we got our butts kicked by Homestead, and they were just a better team than us. They were just bigger, faster, stronger, whatever. But I gave up like 4 goals, and I was like devastated. Like I was so mad at myself. It was a conference game. And I'll never forget, I went home and I started doing drills in the front yard with my dad at like 9:45 at night. Like all the other kids went to bed. Everybody else went on with their lives. They didn't care. And I was like, that wasn't my best performance. I need to get better. And so my dad and I were doing drills in the front yard with the car light shining on the yard. Like just always have been a little bit different. I've like never been satisfied, never been happy.
Thank you so much for being vulnerable about all that tough stuff and cool stuff, and your dad. It sounds like you have a great relationship with your dad. Congratulations. I hope that my kids can say the same as they get older. Let me shift back to a definition and an explanation. Since you, me, and John all sat in the same seat wondering what people meant when they used the word of a mastermind. And again, we're referencing back to your story about how you had to volunteer at a GoBundance event and you heard the word for the first time. Why don't we level set for everybody listening? What do you think a mastermind is? And how do people use that term?
Yeah, so I'm not going to give you the Webster dictionary because I just told everybody I dropped out of college. So clearly that's not my forte. But to me, what a mastermind is just extrapolate the 2 words. You have master and you have mind. And you're not trying to become a master of the mind. You're trying to put like minds together to be a master mind. So I look at it as like, can 2 people, 3 people, 4 people, let's say it's 2. Can 1 + 1 come together to equal 3.5 or 4? Rather than 2. So I look at it as an opportunity, as a place for men, women, children, family, businesses, whatever environment it is, to come together to be stronger as a unit than they can by themselves, solving problems, changing the world, making themselves better humans, making their business better, just being great and being greater than they can alone.
You nailed it. I've never heard anybody say that. Really clean and clear. And now let's transpose, since you have a good bit of weight on your shoulders in a good way. You're the CEO of GoBundance, a beloved organization for both John and I and hundreds of other great people. Tell us about that. What does that feel like when it sits on your shoulders? I remember when I first became a CEO, I felt a certain positive pressure on my shoulders. What does it feel like? What's the first thought going through your heart and mind?
Man, it feels really humbling. And humbling from the point of view that incredible businessmen like David Osborne, Pat Hyben, Mike McCarthy, and Tim Rode have saw in me what I always knew I had and what my parents saw in me and what my wife sees in me, and trusted me to maintain and harness this beautiful, incredible culture that is GoBundance, and to continue to allow it to prosper and grow in a way that can impact more lives than they thought was possible when they first launched it. And so it feels humbling. It gives me butterflies, man. It's just like somebody does something incredible on the sports field. You kind of like tip the cap or go, yeah, great catch, dude. That was incredible. Like it feels like a nice little tip of the cap. Like, you're doing stuff, man. We recognize it and we trust you.
So by the way, for the audience, before we started recording with Matt, we said, hey, Matt, what would you like to get across to the audience? And Matt humbly said, hey, I just want to bring value to the listeners, and we're going to get a lot of value. And I love what you just said, taking a servant leadership approach to the CEO position of GoBundance. And the greatest leaders in the history of the world have been servant leaders. Where do you see your vision aligning with GoBundance, and where do you see us going?
Yeah, so I would say my vision is in alignment with GoBundance from the point of view of it's not a guru-based mastermind group. The power of the mastermind resides across its membership base. There's a lot of incredible there's a lot of incredible, really brilliant, strong, hard-charging, humble, generous, incredible people inside of the organization. And so my vision for it is just to continue to harness the genius that resides inside all of the members and literally bring everybody together. So 1 + 1 can equal 4.5, 5.5, 6.5. Like we can do more to change the world for the better together than we can by ourselves. And if we all just continue to focus on being the best versions of ourselves that is possible, then when we do come together, we can really do and achieve great things. So I see just continuing to create an environment that cultivates candid, open, transparent, honest, humble conversations, deal flow opportunities, relationships, business deals, family, genuine contribution, all of that stuff, and just to continue to be sort of that container in which all of these conversations can occur and naturally be curated.
Dang, that should be on a website. Like seriously, even the container component, the visualization of the words you just said felt really right.
Here's what I wrote.
It felt right.
Here's what I wrote down, Josh and Matt. Harness the genius that resides in the members.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and you also
I mean-
mentioned it's not a guru group, which a lot of others are. You know, I can't name any, but a lot of them are based around one basic core leader. Here, it's you're saying it's not that way.
Well, let's look at UPW, right? Incredibly powerful, transformative, has changed thousands and hundreds of thousands of lives, probably. But when people say they're going to UPW, they don't say I'm going to UPW. They say I'm going to Tony Robbins, right? I'm going to Tony Robbins. I'm going to Tony Robbins, which is amazing. Tony Robbins is incredible. I've listened to his stuff. I've studied it. I've definitely taken some of it into myself, but I would be interested to go to UPW and watch all of the people in the audience stand on the stage and give a presentation. And I think everybody would take more home than if it's just Tony on stage.
All right. That's a great way to define the definition, like the contrast. And one other thing I wanted to, going back to GoBundance for a moment, that people don't actually know the 6 pillars and some of those things. Would you mind, of all the 6 pillars, like what is it about GoBundance that have you been participating, first of all, as a member, or have you been more of an administrator or an executive? Like what do you know of GoBundance from an insider's point of view, and what are the pillars if you want to define them?
Yeah. So I would say that I've been a participant. I've been fortunate. So when I was working for Pat Hyben, one of the things I loved, I got to go see David Osborne do a training on goal setting at the local Keller Williams Market Center. And I went to this goal setting class. And again, I'm 23 and I'm like, here we go, another class. I dropped out of college for a reason, but whatever, I'll go. I want to be a student. So David gets up there and he's got this purple journal. And I'll never forget this purple journal. He has it in the back of his pants, like in his belt buckle, and he was walking around teaching. I'm like, what the hell is he doing with that journal? And he just got it everywhere. And all of a sudden he puts up his vision board and he's like, this was my vision board. And he keeps talking and then he holds up his journal. He's like, this is my journal. And he keeps talking. And finally somebody stops him and goes like, wait, you said that was your vision. Why was it your vision? And he goes, oh, because everything in that picture's already come true. So my wife's making me a new one. And I immediately wrote down, buy purple journal, have a vision for my life, set goals. And like, that was the catalyst for me that changed my life, was like the power. I've always been goal oriented. I've always been an athlete, but I never wrote them down. I never looked back at them. I never studied them. I always had like a rough vision, but I didn't have a crystal clear vision. Today, I read my vision 50 times a year. I look at my goals 100 times a year. Like, I have a compelling mission for my life that pulls me out of bed every day. Why doesn't Eric Thomas have to have an alarm clock? Because his vision for his life pulls him out of bed every morning. It wakes him up. So inside of GoBundance, I mean, for me, probably the pillar that resonates most with me is extreme accountability. Like, I think in life, we do a lot of the things we say we want to do, but we miss out on a lot of them too. And the people around us buy our BS or our stories of why we didn't accomplish what we wanted to accomplish, or why we didn't do what we said we're going to do. Like, hey, it's Thanksgiving and you're going to get together and you're going to see family. You're going to see somebody that's like, oh yeah, I've had a rough year. I've gained some weight, but New Year's resolution, I'm going to lose weight. You see them the next year, they look the same exact they did, or they got bigger. Like, what happened? Oh man, it's just been another rough year, but this is my year. Like, GoBundance is about, this is what you said you wanted to do, which, age defying health happens to be one of our pillars. You said you wanted to lose weight. You asked me to hold you accountable to lose weight. Are you going to walk the walk, or do you just want to talk the talk? And if it's talk the talk, that's okay. There's just not a spot for you in the front seat of my car at this moment. Like, I got to put you somewhere else in the car. So for me, it's all about sort of that extreme accountability, because I think that wraps everything up pretty well.
So I want to give a quick story on this extreme accountability, because you're on point, Matt, about that is your pillar. In the beginning of the week, Matt reaches out to me and a few other guys and said, hey guys, what do you want me to hold you accountable for this week? And I kind of gave you the eye roll that you didn't see because it was over text
I know
message.
You gave it to me 3 different ways. I saw it all ways. I got it all ways. Yeah.
Good. I'm glad. So then this morning, I look at my phone. I do a miracle morning every morning, but I look at my phone around 6:30 in the morning and I see a text from Matt already. And I was so confused. And apparently it was the accountability that I gave on Monday. And then he was just calling me out on it, which I did do the accountability, by the way.
You did it.
I
You
did
did it. I copied and pasted the text, and John responds with a question, goes, really, what 3 people did you talk about? I'm like, no. This was what you wanted to be held accountable to.
Yeah.
He's like, I'm Wim Hof breathing. Let me call you back.
That's right. I was doing some Wim Hof breath work at the time. And I was totally confused when I looked at my phone. I had to reset
Then he-
my immune system, brother. You
Yeah.
know?
Yeah. Then he called me. He goes, "What do you mean? You copy and pasted that?" I'm like, "Yeah, dude. I asked you what you wanted to be held accountable for. I saved it, and now I'm holding you accountable. Did you do it?" He's like, "Yeah. I did it. I crushed it." I'm like, "Yeah, great. Have a good weekend. Talk to you later."
So I so appreciate that. So we're getting to know each other well now, guys. But I appreciate that part of you. So next question is what is the most fun trip you've done with GoBundance so far?
Oh man, with GoBundance, the most fun trip with GoBundance. There's been some really awesome trips in Tahoe, man. Meeting Robert Kiyosaki was pretty incredible. That was the second year I volunteered. I was supposed to be like his like liaison because I was a part of the Go Crew, which is the volunteer team that we talked about your son being on. And they had kind of said like, "Hey, you be the leader of the Go Crew." So my job was to make sure I got Robert Kiyosaki to the where he needed to go at that at that event on time and on point. And I went and got him from his room and was supposed to walk him to this dinner. And he was having dinner with David and Pat and Tim and a couple other people. And he stops and we're looking there's this like terrace at Squaw, if you've ever been, that kind of overlooks this beautiful mountain and below is the ice rink and the pools and stuff. And he stops and he just starts talking to me. And just like he's telling me about how he's hunted lions and he's hunted elephants and Donald Trump and he's done this. He's like, and I'm just having this conversation with the guy who wrote Rich Dad Poor Dad, which changed. I mean, I don't even know how many lives it's changed. It changed mine, changed multiple people who I've given the book to's lives. And I'm standing there having a conversation and I'm getting texts from David going, "Where is he? We're supposed to be having dinner with him. What are you doing?" And I couldn't get this nice, sincere, genuine, humble man to just stop having a conversation with me so he could get to where he was supposed to go. That was probably my coolest event just from that perspective. But it's been Tahoe, it's been Atlanta. There's guys that went on a trip to Croatia. There's guys that have done Machu Picchu. There's guys that have done Mount Kilimanjaro. It's pretty much endless. The trips and the adventure that these guys take.
I love the Kiyosaki example and story, and he has changed our lives as well. And I also had a similar experience in Tahoe a different year, also at Squaw Creek, when Rob O'Neill came
Yeah.
and spoke. And Rob O'Neill, for the listeners, is credited for the one who killed Osama bin Laden. And, he spoke, and the next day I found myself just randomly skiing with Rob O'Neill. And we're taking slopes together, and then we come off the slopes in Squaw Creek, and we're sitting around a fire table with about 6 other guys, and he's literally sitting to my right like Josh is, and we're having cigars, and he's just telling us story after story after story about being on SEAL Team 6, and it was surreal.
What was really cool is I'm, similar to your story. It's like a surreal experience, right? But Hal Elrod is also a member of GoBundance, and he spoke the same year Robert Kiyosaki did. And Robert Kiyosaki looked a little bit old. He had gained some weight. You could just tell like life gets to you. It does, right? We're all going to die eventually. And he gets Hal Elrod's book. He reached out to GoBundance probably 6 to 12 months later, crediting GoBundance for saving his life. He had lost a bunch of weight. He had gotten his mental clarity back he had wanted by doing the Miracle Morning. And he said, had he not spoken at that event, like he wouldn't have had that exposure to Hal Elrod. And now if you look at him today, looks thin, looks lean, looks sharp, still a little crazy. Like, he's always been, but he's like our crazy uncle, right? We love the guy. So that's the power of a mastermind. That's the power of a tribe, is you get exposed to people who can change your life.
Yeah,
Amazing.
what a story. As a matter of fact, when we ran into Robert Kiyosaki, it was one of those real estate guys, radio podcast cruises, and he and I got to talk. And I said to him, "Hey, Robert, would you mind doing a podcast with me?" So he's episode 25. You're like episode 250. So you're 10 times the man he is.
Yeah,
No.
10 times less, or I don't know which one it is, but man,
you want to hear what's even better? So I'm sitting there. We do a very brief podcast. If you want to hear it, it's episode 25. Really great one. He teaches us a lot. And then I said, "Hey, Robert, would you mind doing a drop-in where you promote the show?" He goes, "I'd love to." And we have run that for every episode since there, because he just went above and beyond. But I will tell you, the guy, he likes to fight. He still likes to fight. He calls himself a soldier. He talks about Vietnam really changed him. And anyway, for all the cool things we've all learned from him, boy, he's a fighter too. I'll tell you.
he is. He is.
But we credit him with a lot of what we're talking about here today. So, at the end of this show, we like to leave an open platform. Ask, how can we be of service to you, Matt King? What's going on in your world? And how can we follow up or stay in touch with the great work you're doing the floor is yours.
Yeah, I would go back to what we talked about when we were doing the pre-show or just talking before we hit record. I just ask that everybody continue to be the best version of themselves that they can possibly be. If I can ever be of service to you, I mean, I'll share with you all my like social media handles and you can share that stuff in the show. But I wouldn't be where I'm at in my life if people didn't reach out and give me a helping hand when I needed it and give me advice when I needed it. And so the best thing I can do is to just take any opportunity I can to whoever I need to help. I was walking into my dad's office this morning. There's a homeless guy walking around Milwaukee talking to himself and telling himself all these stories and started asking me questions. And I was just like, what do you need? You want a meal? What do you need? He's like, oh, I haven't eaten today. I'm like, come on. Took him into Subway, bought him lunch. Like, just keep trying to be the best version of yourselves that you can possibly be. And I think together we can really do epic, extraordinary things. And, we live in the best country in the world, in America. There's so much opportunity. There's so much, so much that we can go do if we choose and set our mind to it and just harness the idea of find the way or make the way. And I think the world will continue to be a better place.
Matt, thank you. What great content we've had today on the show. And Matt, we salute you. We appreciate you so much. And thank you so much for being on.
Thank you, buddy.
Thank you guys. And this show's changing lives. I think you're giving people great value and grateful that you guys have the show.
Cheers.
Damn straight. We just got we got to the end of another great show. And everyone listening right now, you're the family and friends. Thanks for staying till the end.
That was so fun. And hey, hit the like, hit subscribe. We're here to serve you guys. That's why we're doing this show. Josh is not paying me. I'm doing this off of my quote unquote sweat equity because we want to make a difference in your life. And then that ripple effect will continue to touch the world.
Hey, amen, brother. Please check us out on capitalhacking.com, all the social media threads. And yes, I know you've probably already sent this episode to one of your best friends. Thank you. We love you. Just go right into your iPhone, hit the plus symbol. We'll talk to you later. See you next week.
Share.